Well, there are a lot of people that are growing marijuana that are using pesticides and chemicals that are dangerous. And there was one. What was the company that got caught recently, Jamie? They tested their stuff.
Cushy Punch, I believe. Yeah.
Say that again.
Cushy Punch with the microphone got fucked up.
Cushy Punch. We had a guy named John Norris on the podcast, and he wrote a book called Hidden War, and he started off his career as a game warden, investigating people that caught too much fish, things along those lines. And he thought, hey, what a great job this would be. I'm going to get a job in the great outdoors. I love the outdoors, and, I'll get to do some good for the wildlife. Well, turns out along the way they started stumbling upon these public land Mexican cartel grow operations where they would grow these marijuana plants, just giant plots of them, and they would use these extremely toxic pesticides.
Oh, yeah.
And also they would use poison to keep animals out. And they had vats of this shit laying around, and some of the marijuana was actually infested with this shit or infected.
Yeah, my friend Amanda Chicago Lewis is this great journalist focused on marijuana, and she put the fear of God in me about those pesticides and carcinogens. And the other thing is just like these different oils that people are smoking. Some of them are marketed as like all natural, but they find synthetic cannabinoids in them. Mm-hmm. And basically, synthetic cannabinoids like K2 and spice are what they're known as sometimes. And people call it synthetic marijuana, but the big difference is that THC is known as like a partial agonist. So it will, like these receptors, it will activate them to an extent. You're chilled, it's relaxed. But the cannabinoids, they also interact with the cannabinoid receptors, same as THC, but they're full agonists. And so they make you basically like go crazy, and your heart starts beating fast. You start, people overdose and die on these cannabinoids. And these are all made in China too. I went into a lab in China where they made these, and they made fentanyl analogs.
They let you in?
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole thing. I wrote them on the internet. I made a fake email address, and I said, I'm a drug dealer. I'd like to visit your lab. May I do that when I come to China? And they said, yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's like...
Did you have a fake drug dealer name?
I called myself... What did I call myself? I had this like Skype avatar picture where I looked like a bro, like a 23-year-old dude with like big hair, like kind of a stoner look. And they just they said, yeah, come by. And so I went to Shanghai, and I met this guy at the train station, and he owned his own lab. And he asked me if I was a journalist, actually, like pretty straight away. He was like, are you a journalist though? And I was like, no. It's like, no, crazy question. Do I look like a journalist? No. And so he didn't know whether to trust me. So we went to his apartment. It was like the top floor of this fancy high rise. He's a total family man. He had he lived there with his wife and kid.
Stranger.
And,
brings a stranger to his home.
Yep.
Meets a guy who says he's a drug dealer, picks him up at the train station, says, hey, come to where my kids sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so then he showed me, because they had the website. A lot of these companies in China, they make legitimate chemicals and recreational chemicals. And they specialize in drugs that are legal in China, but banned in the West. So banned in the U.S. So
what is illegal in China?
Well, in the U.S., we have this thing called the Federal Analog Act. And so that bans all these drugs even before they're invented. So anything that's similar to marijuana, structurally or in effect, anything that's similar to opioids is just automatically banned, automatically scheduled. But in China, they have to do it one by one by one by one. And so fentanyl itself was scheduled in China, was banned in China decades ago. But these chemists, like this one I met, specialize in this window when something is banned in the U.S., but it's still legal in China, but it's become popularized on the internet. So there's all these websites, these web forums where these like drug nerds basically are like, you can't get fentanyl, but you can get this thing that's kind of like fentanyl. And
that's a
what
hilarious
this guy
term,
said.
by the way. Drug nerds.
Yeah, that's what they are. And like psychonauts, I'm sure you've heard of psychonauts,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
They specialize in these new, usually psychedelics. They tend to prefer that have never been tested on human subjects. But this guy was entirely specialized in fentanyl analogs and synthetic cannabinoids. And so he took out, he had his like fake list on his website of all the legitimate, like Cialis and, legitimate pharmaceuticals, things like that. But at his apartment, he showed me the real list. And that had all these, it was cannabinoids, fentanyl. It was like fake Valium, like different types of Xanax. And he showed me the prices. And I was like, all right, looks good. Can I go see your lab? And so finally he decided he trusted me. He called up his driver on the phone, and the driver showed up, and he was kind of this big, like, muscular dude who didn't speak any English. And I was a little worried. I was like, oh, this is the dude who's going to break my kneecaps when he finds out I'm a journalist, But I just got in the car, and we drove like 30 minutes to the outskirts of Shanghai. And we got to the lab, and it just looked like a regular office park, like a suburban office park. There was a fountain in front of the building. There was like, you use the key card to get in the parking lot. And then it looked like kind of a new construction building. It smelled like cement. We went inside. We went up to the labs. All the windows were open. It was the middle of the winter, and it was kind of a strong chemical smell. But it looked kind of just like Breaking Bad, like, like industrial-sized glassware, beakers, Bunsen burners, all that stuff from high school chemistry. And he points up, like, basically I had my recorder, on my phone, and I had it in my jacket pocket just on record. And so he told me I couldn't take pictures. And so to take notes, I would just say stuff aloud. I'd be like, oh, that's orangish, a light orange mixture that's being mixed up by a mechanical arm. And you say it's benzofentanyl, very interesting. And so, but the language barrier was such that he, didn't think I was being too much of a weirdo. But even though I clearly was. But the cannabinoids were crazy. There was like a table like this, like almost exactly this size, that was piled up with the cannabinoids that were there for drying. And they were mounds like this high, just sitting right out in the open.
What'd they look like? Does it look like pot?
No, because it's not a plant, It's just basically, it's a chemical that's sprayed onto plant matter, like dried sage and stuff like that.
Really?
So they try to make it look like pot, and, you can smoke that stuff out of a pipe or even roll it into a joint. But if you look closely, though, it's very clearly not pot.
Wow. And so they're drying this stuff?
That's what I think that, they also had like drying machines. It looked like, my editor didn't like it when I used this term, but when you go into Subway and there's the bread baking machines right there?
Yeah.
It looked exactly like that.
Why did he not like that term if that's what
I don't know.
Like?
I think he thought Subway would sue us or something.
Jesus Christ.
But they had those, and then they had like big buckets of 1 pound bags of these cannabinoids and these fentanyl analogs just ready for shipping. He said they were sending them to Russia, to Belgium, to the Netherlands. And then I think a lot of times it's repackaged there. And so I don't know if you knew that the cannabinoids like used to be sold legally in head shops like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would always be in these colorful packets. They almost look like a Pop Rocks package. They say like
Spice,
spice and laugh out loud and stuff. And so I think in Europe, that's where they do that. They put it in this colorful packaging. They and then they ship it to the U.S. And but yeah, he was saying that like he kept like really close track of the law in all these countries, especially China. Like they're scheduling this next week, so we're going to take all this and throw it away. And I thought at first he was like probably just putting me on, but I think they actually do that. Like these guys are businessmen first. They want to make money, and going afoul of the law, it just doesn't, it's not conducive.
This is where bath salts came from, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Bath salts tend to be cathinones. So synthetic cathinones. Have you ever heard of the cat plant? KHAT.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the hijackers, pirates in Somalia.
They take
love
that.
To take
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
It's really popular in the Middle East. It's a stimulant. It gets you really.
Have you tried it?
No, I never have. Yeah, but I grew up in Minnesota though, and there's a big Somali population, and so there was a big controversy in Minnesota whether or not to ban cat leaves from being sold in regular stores.
Is it legal?
I think it is. I think it's not legal in the U.S. now, if I'm not, but I don't know for sure.
Interesting.
But so
it's KHAT. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And so the synthetic cathinones are the synthetic version of that, like made in a lab. But they're there's tons of different kinds. You don't know how strong it is, and the bath salts. They, of course, it has nothing to do with like salts for your bath. This was a misnomer, and they also called them like incense, and sometimes plant food. And on the back of all of them, it would say not intended for human consumption. So that was like the way they got around. They thought they could get around the Federal Analog Act because part of the law says that something is automatically illegal if it's intended for human consumption. So these guys are like, not intended for human consumption.
Right. Just put it in your bath.
Yeah.
Your bath smells like fucking toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the homeless guy ate someone's face? Remember that? And they said he was on bath salts?
Yeah, but that was actually disproven. There was none found in his system.
He was just crazy?
The Causeway cannibal, I think they called him. Yeah.
And he was just crazy, right?
I think he may have like smoked some weed, but yeah, I don't think he had anything else in his system. Yeah.
That was just high on life.
Yeah. Oh man, Florida. The original Florida man.
Yeah, it is. It's funny that one state is so synonymous with fuckery.
Yeah, and they also had this thing called Flocka. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have, but I don't remember what it is.
It's more cathinones, and like if you look it up on YouTube, there's all these people going crazy. That killed like I think maybe 100 people in Florida during a time, and the problem is, like the prohibition on drugs causes people to do really stupid things, right? So you have this cathinone like Flocka, and as bad as that was, once they banned Flocka, the chemists started manipulating the chemical structure. So they change one little thing. They add like a chlorine group, for example. So like a chlorine like molecule, it has nothing to do with the drug, but they just add it on there to make it so it becomes legal. But then it becomes more difficult for your body to like digest it. So it becomes worse for you, and the high becomes worse. And then they ban that, and then they make something new that's even worse for you. And it's just like down the line. And these Chinese, so that's what all these new drugs have in common. My book is about they're called NPS, novel psychoactive substances. So fentanyl is the most famous and the most dangerous, but these include basically like synthetic new versions of every drug. So there's, marijuana, the NPS version is the synthetic cannabinoids. Heroin, the NPS version is fentanyl. There's LSD. So you take LSD. It's like a wonder drug, right? No one has ever died of an LSD overdose. People may have thought they were a bird or whatever and jumped off a roof, but no one has ever overdosed on the drug itself. But once they started really cracking down on LSD, these Chinese chemists started manufacturing this new type of psychedelic that was sold as acid. And so if you went on the dark web, this was like in the 10 years ago or so, 5-10 years ago, you would search for acid, and you would think you were buying LSD, but you were buying this new psychedelic that could kill you and did kill you. These drugs are called N-bombs. It's like the worst name of all time. These N-bomb drugs, and they started killing people in like the suburbs in Dallas.
Your phone's ringing.
Ooh, fail. And yeah.
You really were a music editor.
Yeah. So these kids all thought they just wanted, they did their research. These were like smart kids who said, oh, LSD has never killed anyone. Let's get that. this new
Right.
thing, and it killed him.
And so it wasn't really LSD. It was just
No, it totally nothing in
relation at
common
all?
at all. Yeah.
your Instagram. It's very informational, and well, tell everybody what you do so people get a handle on this.
Yeah,
First.
I'm a non-permissive environment specialist. Basically, I teach people how to live, move, and travel in places where they probably shouldn't be traveling. How to get out of handcuffs, how to get out of zip ties. I show people how to survive in such environments. My background is in law enforcement in Mexico, so I spent a lot of time down there. And over the years, that's kind of led me into teaching myself how to survive in that environment. And apparently, after a while, that made me kind of sought after as far as teaching other people how to survive in such environments. So I've been doing that for a while here in the U.S., military, law enforcement, civilians. Also.
Yeah, and you started working in law enforcement what year?
It's 2004. 2004.
So you started before everything got really crazy in Mexico.
Yes. So you can kind of trace back where it officially kicked off by the start of the Felipe Calderón's presidency, which is the second to last president we had. He basically said, full on war against the cartels. And by that time, I was kind of just getting done with my training in northern Mexico as a police officer. And what I thought was going to be, community policing and stuff like that turned into a full on, here's a assault rifle and just go climb up on that Humvee with those military guys and let's go arrest cartel members.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So you thought you were just getting a regular law enforcement gig?
Yeah. I mean, realistically, there was no such sort of kind of job description. This was post 9/11. I was actually in med school, and that the economy and all over the border with the tightened security and stuff like that kind of went down, down the drain. And most of the money that I was using for med school, went away. And, that in the newspaper, young, unmarried individuals that don't have any kids, you're welcome to join type thing.
Wow. Young, unmarried individuals with no kids. They want that specifically.
Yeah, that was probably a big alarm bell should have sounded in my head, but there weren't a lot of opportunities for somebody my age there that didn't have a career. And I thought it would be, everybody said, don't go, but
yeah. I would have said that. If I was your friend, I'd be like, Ed.
But to me, it was a challenge. And a lot of people said I couldn't do it, and I did it. And then it turned into something that wasn't what most people expected when they went into it. It was a full-on urban warfare type situation.
Wow. So post 9/11, the borders get tightened up, and the economy gets very bad in the border towns. Is that what happens? Because people can't get through as easily?
It's heightened security, so commerce is freely done on both sides. Border waits that used to take an hour now would take 3 hours or 4 hours, depending on the time of day. So, things got affected. Also, a worldwide recession situation kind of happened, so everything kind of went down the toilet. I have a lot of family in the border region, and most of our family businesses that we had, basically kind of tanked during that time.
So from 9/11 to here we are 18 years later, it's been a pretty radical change.
Yes.
Is that safe to say?
Yes.
100% change? Like what if you had to try to describe it?
So, I mean, basically, the part of the country that I had most of my experience is the Baja, Sonora, Juarez type region, northern Mexico, basically. What happened is that all the cartels started fighting for the most rich drug routes on the planet. One of them, of course, being the city of Tijuana. So the city of Tijuana that's the corner of Latin America. It's the most cross-border on the planet. And with that, there's a lot of commerce that goes on in that region. A lot of things get shipped to Tijuana and then driven up into San Diego. And a lot of people have businesses on both sides. And among all of this movement, there's a giant organized crime war going on it used to be overt, like on the streets. Middle of the day, you would see these cartel convoys arriving at a restaurant, and all the cartel guys outside with their AKs and stuff like that. This was 2004, 2005 era.
And what is the military or the law enforcement attitude towards that? Like, how do they handle that?
So we go back to 2004 when I first got it started, and it was look the other way.
Really?
Yes.
Look the other way.
Look the other way.
That was specific instruction that you got?
It was one of those things where I went there and I got a firearm. Here you go. Here's your Glock 17. Here are your 2 magazines. Here's your Mossberg 500. And you see all those cars over there? We don't ask them for anything. Let them pass. That's, we don't do anything of that nature. And then it would see members of the military as well, kind of go the other way type of situation. This is 2004.
Do you think that this was just to avoid conflict, or was it because of corruption?
It's always corruption. I mean,
Always.
at always levels, at all those types of levels down there during this time, there was a lot of corruption. Things changed, but things in a way, in some levels, are always the same. There was definitely some sort of pact going on, some sort of fear-based pact during that time, and when Felipe Calderon finally said, enough is enough, we're going to declare war, he basically militarized a lot of the counter-narcotic efforts in Mexico. So the military went from being, in their bases or manning stations out there to actually actively going out and looking for cartel cells and trying to eliminate them, right? So basically army on the street type situation. And another thing he did was basically a lot of the police chiefs around the country were being traded out for former military officials or military guys, officers. One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Leizaola. I don't know if maybe your audience could look him up. He's a very famous lieutenant colonel from Mexico. Actually has a documentary on him called Mexico's Most Bravest Man. Pretty interesting guy. He was the one that headed us up. He directed us at the start of these operations against the cartels. And he basically said, this isn't a policing problem. This is a counterinsurgency problem. So we're gonna militarize it basically. And after he kind of took control, everything in it changed. The cartels weren't as overt as they were. So they started going underground.
So when you joined, you expected it to be regular law enforcement. When it became this counterinsurgency, militarized effort against the cartels, was there every time where you were like, I got to get the fuck out of this job? Like, this is too dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, my generation, I was part of the 7th generation of officers going through this program, policing. And out of my generation, the first year we had 2 of them in jail for corruption charges and 3 dead. Just from,
out of how many?
Out of 23 guys.
So out of 23 guys,
2 in jail.
5 gone.
5 gone. 2 of them very dramatic. 2 of them were kind of the origins of how I got into the whole counter abduction type thing. 2 of my guys got picked up outside of a hotel in the downtown Tijuana, and by cartel members dressed as federal police officers. The whole 9 yards, the uniforms, the car, everything cloned. They got asked for their papers outside and got put into a van. They found them a day later. Horribly, mutilated and all this type of stuff.
Tortured.
And that kind of, that was this
is real.
This is real, and I should probably have a, escape plan.
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't, I didn't know anything else, basically. So it wasn't like I had something to fall back on.
Right.
And it was good pay for what it was. And yeah, but fear, that's when fear got,
The stress must be insane.
Yeah, you're always on. There's we always had this thing on the meeting wall. It said, "There's no vacation, even when there's vacation." You would go on vacation, and you would get your gun to go on vacation.
Of course.
It was pretty insane.
Now, have you ever been confronted?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not, I have a lot of friends that are in military up here in the U.S. and it's not like them. They go off overseas and they do something in a different country with different people don't speak the same language. I was doing all of this in the place I grew up.
Ooh.
Right. So I knew some of these people at times, we every now and then I would say, hey, I know that guy from when I was a kid, or we were in school together. And now he has a plate carrier with an AK-47 and a gold gun on his pants, right?
To have your life on the line over there and see all this chaos and obvious either lack of organization or outright corruption, it must be insanely frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, putting people in that were clearly guilty of things, and then seeing them come out. Or the legal system down there that I had to endure, you would have to go and do a face-to-face with all these people, right? Go into a federal courthouse, leave your firearms behind, do a face-to-face with these people inside that you just got for however many tons of cocaine or pot or whatever, and then go outside, and they're outside, Now I know who you are, There's no anonymity in that regard, so you would have to sign things, And then seeing some of the people that were with you working on your side, and seeing then how some of them would fall into corruption charges, and then sue the government, and then get your jobs back. But now you have somebody that's compromised within your own unit.
Wow.
All right. So they did try a few things to try and clean out police forces. One of them was a plan they called the C3 plan. It was like a filter for police officers down there. It's still in action, but it's questionable if it's effective or not. I saw a lot of people go through it, and later on they would turn out to be cartel guys. Basically, they would do a background check, FBI background check, polygraph exam, drug testing, all of these things to see that you were, clean to work on these police forces. The problem is that the polygraphs turned out to be unconstitutional to fire somebody over them. So a lot of these people got hired back after they would fail basic polygraph exam. So again, it's a lot of attempts to clean it up, and you would be on the level, and all these people wouldn't be on the level, but they were still there. So
what percentage of people are not on the level, if you had to guess, roughly?
I'd say it would depend. I'd say 30% probably.
That's a lot.
Like on my experience of the people that I worked, that 30% weren't on the level.
Well, you must cherish the 70.
Oh, like family.
Yeah,
like family. And you would know when some of these people weren't on the level, because I have this running joke that I have this. I went in with the same card that I drove out of the office with. Shitty truck that I had. That I bought when I off my own dime, first car, and I drove out of the office when I quit the job that same day. I drove out of the office in that truck. But a lot of these guys would come in with their Hummers and H2s and just weird cars. So like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Oh. Like, we are working the same office. Why do you have a 3-story house?
That's so obvious, though.
Prove it,
Yeah, but the obviousn's of it.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The blatant. You're driving a nice car, living in a big house, and everybody else is like, "What?"
Yeah. There's obviously these unwritten rules of you wouldn't tell on this guy.
Of course.
But it was obvious.
Yeah.
And when it came time to share information of a certain kind, or we're gonna go over here, and you would have to turn around and look around, see who was listening.
Yeah.
You wouldn't trust a lot of these people. So how are we gonna do our job if we can't trust the people that are working with us?
Who was it that recently called for decriminalization? Was it your president that called for a decriminalization of all drugs in America to go along with Mexico? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
To try to do something about the cartels.
Yeah, we're on the brink of legalizing marijuana in Mexico right now. Like, there's been a few landmark cases, and it's gold rush type situation right now. There's a lot of companies down there that have had experience up here that want to go down there.
Right.
So the culture is ready for it, I think.
Do you think that would help?
I don't know. When it comes to legalizing pot up here, It hasn't helped down there as far as lowering things. It's actually made things kind of worse.
How's it made things worse?
They changed. I don't know. They changed they changed what they were producing. So that the
They went to
reason
meth, yeah.
the reason why there's a heroin epidemic up here and fentanyl epidemic up here, I think has some relationship with how things got legalized up here and how they switched product down there. So lighter colored heroin is coming down from Mexico, and I've seen. I work with law enforcement up here in the U.S. Doing classes and kind of they send me things like, "What do you think about this, Ed?" And I've seen that lighter colored heroin pop up in places as far off as Chicago.
That's you. So you know it because of the color.
Yeah, the color, the smell, the consistency. You can kind of tell if it's Asian or Mexican.
Is it a different strain? Like
it's probably a different strain, and it's also the amount of sun it gets in the region where it's being grown. It's higher altitude, so it's lighter color, not as stinky. I don't know, but I think it's a relation that kind of relates to the legalization issue down there. It didn't affect them in the pockets; they just switched product.
it's got to be. It's such a strange relationship because the reason why these drug cartels have so much power is because they're selling drugs to the United States.
Yeah.
So it's like you have this connection to this country that has this great big wall that it wants to build. And on one side, everybody's buying up all the illegal drugs. And the other side, everyone's killing everybody to try to make and sell these illegal drugs.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of holes underneath that wall.
Yeah.
And drones.
Yeah.
Drone technology.
Is that wall going to help anything?
Well, the wall's already been up for a few years.
Part of it.
In places like Tijuana, which
Yeah.
is like one of the richest drug routes on the planet. And the drugs are cost the same,
It's the same.
Yeah.
And what about like the ocean? Can't they just take a boat?
I've seen one large submarine in my time working.
Really?
Yes.
Large? Like military size?
Like scientific size.
Where the fuck does somebody buy a submarine?
Online, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
You can buy a submarine?
You can buy a small submarine for a small amount of money. I think the main part of the submarine ownership is maintenance. That was the reason we found it, is that it wasn't properly maintained, so it
Sunk?
Yeah, it actually floated, couldn't sink,
Oh.
and it had a bunch of things hanging off behind it. But
Submarines scare the shit out of me. You can't see where you're going.
well, yeah, I've seen submarines, drones, like a squadron of drones with a bunch of loads on it,
Wow.
flying.
How heavy can a drone get? Still fly?
I've seen full like 2 kilos on it.
Really?
Yeah.
So they just fly in the coke over the top.
Yeah, and the only reason I found out about those is one of those crashed in a roadside next to the border fence.
Were you around when that CIA drug plane crashed in Mexico with tons of cocaine on it?
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I was aware of that situation.
What the fuck is that about?
I mean, realistically, there's a lot of Americans running around in Mexico.
Yeah.
That's in.
And there's a lot of cowboys, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people that say, listen, we just make this one run. They're like, the government doesn't give a fuck about us. My pension sucks.
It could be,
Could be.
Every now and then, and this isn't a secret. Every now and then you would see a dude out there that's blonde, tall, and has a bunch of tattoos that don't belong down there, working on the military side of things in Mexico. Mm-hmm. Or some dudes doing something someplace, and then you would get a call, oh, they're fine, just leave them alone, type thing, So who knows, who knows?
So if it's 3 out of 10 were corrupt where you were, it might be like 1 out of 10
I have no idea.
CIA guys.
I mean, usually we would get to, since I have a pretty good spoken English, I would get sent places for training or for liaison work with some people that would go down there, and I would never know where the hell some of these people were from, So who knows?
What is the solution? Is there any solutions to this?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people covering this, you get very weary. You want to see solutions.
Yeah.
You want to find solutions, and you want to come with that optimism of finding solutions, and you want to justify why you're doing this, what you're doing this for. Not just to tell the stories, but to look for solutions to this. And it gets worried, but there's 3 areas I believe that are solutions. First, I do agree with you on the idea of drug policy reform. Again, it's a tough uphill battle. I mean, going back to 2012, I wrote editorials about, one of the reasons you should legalize marijuana is because of the marijuana come from Mexico, which goes to cartels, which pays for killers, which pays for corruption. But at the same time, marijuana, a lot of it is legalized in the United States, and the violence actually just got worse in Mexico. So you've also got the issue of heroin, cocaine, crystal meth, fentanyl, and you've got the cartels who've got into a bunch of other rackets now. They steal crude oil, which is a big deal. They steal billions of dollars worth of crude oil, criminals down there, from pipelines.
Just tap into a pipeline or something?
Yeah, you go to a pipeline. You normally put in 2 taps. You drill 2 holes in the pipeline. You drill a hole to take the oil out, and you drill a hole to put water in to try and keep it equal, the pressure the same. If you saw this a crazy video recently of in a small town in Mexico where there was a tap open, a really bad tap. The oil was just spraying out, and a bunch of people were lining up just to pick up the oil from the pipeline, and it exploded, and it was just like crazy death toll.
Yeah, I did see that
from that. But anyway, I do believe in drug policy reform. We have to talk about this. It has to be on the table. I mean, Americans, no one knows really what Americans spend on drugs. But there's this survey which you can find online if you just tap in what do Americans spend on illegal drugs, and there's an estimate of $100 billion a year. So that amount of money. I mean, that's an estimate. I mean, it could be right. It's hard to know. It's a very round number, but like $100 billion a year. Now, if you think about that pumping into these cartels year after year, I mean, decades, how much of that, if it's 30 billion of that going down to Mexico, then over 10 years, 300 billion, over 30 years, close to $1 trillion, that really creates this monster. But anyway, secondary, so I believe in drug policy reform. I mean, I don't know how, rehab for everyone who needs it, because heroin addicts buy a lot of heroin. So every one you save from that, you can stop a lot of heroin, and a lot of that money, money goes to these people who are doing this stuff. But a second area, I believe, is social work in the neighborhoods. I've done a lot of interviews particularly with the assassins, with the killers in cartels in Mexico and also around Latin America. I've been traveling around Jamaica, Brazil, Central America, Colombia, talking to a lot of the killers especially. And when I sit down with them, I try and get their life story. Like, how did they first get into this? Because you're not born doing this stuff. And often, in some cases, there's different profiles. There's some of them, there's one guy, this is down in Honduras, which is also a crazy situation. There's a guy there, I'd actually met him before. I'd met him when I was doing some reporting down there back in 2015. And he was driving for us. And he was also carrying a gun to help protect us. I was with a journalist who'd been hit before, who'd been actually shot before. And then I met him again afterwards and got him to tell his story, which is kind of typical of a lot of these guys. And he described how he'd been abandoned as a kid by his parents and had this real hate that he had with the world. Just fuck the world. And he described the first time that he carried out murders. This was actually, he carried out, later on, he documented all these hits he'd done and decapitations he'd done and this kind of crazy stuff. But the first time he carried out a murder was probably the freakiest, when he was, I think, 14. And they got a family. They went into a house. They got a family and they butchered a family. And when he described that, and then described later on, how he became a hired killer. And the thing about him, like some of these people, you think they're psychopaths. They really don't care. But some of them really do have these conflicts inside their heart. I think he was someone, or at least back to that interview, and and it's hard to balance that, someone who does evil, but also has been a victim as well, a victim and a victimizer. And you feel that pain. Since then, he's himself been murdered. But it was one. So how you get social work to reach people from a very young age, because often they're recruited into organized crime when they're 12, 13 years old.
So he butchered this family when he was 14. Was he stealing money from them? Was he?
So the story with that was he said that he was hanging around with these basically street kids. And one of the other kids said, I know where there's some money in a house. We can get some money in a house. So they went in there and killed this family. And it turned out there was no money there. And the reason the other kid had said go there was because he'd actually been living with his family. And he said they'd been abusive to him. So he wanted to have revenge on his family. But what was so really sick about this, when he was describing it, was they had this family and they would, to stop them defending themselves, they would take them one by one, pin them in a room and take them one by one, take them out, butcher them, how the other ones didn't really know what was going on. And the action itself, but how teenage kids can think about that stuff. And then later on, when he was talking about the decapitations, he was talking about they get contracts with decapitation inside the they say, look, we want this killing, we want you to decapitate the guy. We want this we want to see video of the guy being decapitated. We want that. We want the guy to suffer. And when he hacks their heads off, there'll sometimes still be a moment when the life goes out of them, and when the body is still twitching. He says they can still see there's a bit nerves, almost like a chicken, like a headless chicken. There's a part when they're still twitching a bit, even after they, they've lost their kind of severed their connections there.
Oof.